From hell's heart I stab at thee. For hatred's sake I spew my last breath at thee. Hey folks, this is Brenton Lengel. I am a political activist, anarchist, and writer. I've had 7 plays produced in New York City, and I am the author of Snow White Zombie Apocalypse, which has been nominated for 2 Ringo Awards, the second issue of which was just sent out to its Kickstarter backers and will be published soon via Scout Comics. We're also going to be launching a Kickstarter for issue number 3. But I wanted to come to you today, live, straight off the dome, to give you kind of my thoughts on voting. And this is like really important to me here, just because it's been floating around in the stratosphere, and a lot of people have been saying things. There's a big video by ContraPoints that came out and vouched, and a lot of like bread tubers have said one thing. You've had some more committed radicals say the other, and I sort of wanted to give you my take on this because I have voted. The monologue that I just did, by the way, at the beginning, the very short one, that is actually Captain Ahab from Moby Dick, which is very appropriate for this. Some of you guys may also know it a little bit more from Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about voting and the philosophy and morality of voting, because as someone who did not vote for Hillary Clinton in 2016 and took a huge amount of hostility for it, and in fact, it actually damaged some of my friendships, I wanted to talk a little bit about voting, why you should vote, and what you should think about when you do vote. So first of all, I'm coming at this from a radical perspective. I'm not someone that's going to come here and tell you to vote out the fascists. I mean, yes, vote out the fascists if you can, but like that's not the point. The point is that there's been a long dialogue with regard to voting and what it does and what it doesn't do, and I'm going to be saying a couple of new things that people may have not heard here. Now, you may have also heard this before, but you may also not quite get the philosophy that I'm coming from. Because there's a lot of misapprehensions that people have about voting, especially in the United States, where votes count far less than they would, say, in Europe in a parliamentary system. So first off, what is really important to understand is that voting it actually does do something. You would not see these efforts to disenfranchise people coming usually from the right, because they tend to win when fewer people vote. If it didn't do anything at all, it does have an effect. That said, very famously, the rich will never permit you to vote away their wealth. It's absolutely not going to happen, and under no circumstances can an actual revolution be carried out by people who vote. It's just no, that's not going to happen, because the state functions primarily not for the people that vote, not for its regular citizens, but it, as an institution, functions primarily for for securing and maintaining ownership and protection of valuable property. So its main constituents, essentially, is what I'm getting at. But here's the deal with why I think that people honestly should be voting in just about every election if they can, but they should also not see that as a totalitarian solution and not as the major or even the biggest part of their engagement. And also why voting and morality and how those two tie together. So the first thing to understand is what a lot of people don't get about morality is they seem to think of morality as though like almost like a cargo cult way, where you go in and you cast your vote, you put your hand up for the thing that your group wants. And this is a moral act, and that not doing it is an immoral act, or doing it for something that some other group wants is an immoral act. And maybe like on like an individual community level where there's actual power in the votes. Yeah, sure, whatever. But what's important to understand about voting and about morality is that moral blame can only be assigned to someone if they could have conceivably done something else within the situation to have a different outcome. So a way that I might compare this to is, imagine that you are driving your car, and unbeknownst to you, someone has snuck in the night and they've cut your brakes. So then, as you're coming up to an intersection, a kid runs in front of your car and you slam on the brakes and nothing happens, unfortunately, and there is an accident. Now, that's a terrible thing to think about, and I apologize for putting that image in your head, but it's really important. In that situation, are you morally responsible for hitting that child? No, you are not. The only person who is morally responsible for hitting that child is the person who cut your brakes. So again, moral responsibility can only be assigned if there is some you should have done X, Y, or Z, and this would have resulted in a different action. So how does this apply to voting, particularly in the United States, where we have the Electoral College? So particularly in a presidential or large election like that. Well, the fact is that we do not directly elect our leaders. We elect people who then go and elect our leaders. It's a really stupid system called the Electoral College, which was sold to me as a child as a way to keep someone like Donald Trump out of the presidency, even if the majority of people want him. It's a really, really dumb thing, and we need to do away with it immediately. But the point is that imagine when you cast your vote for whoever you vote for, it doesn't matter. You cannot be held morally responsible for the outcome of the winner of that election. Why can you not be held morally responsible? Well, because you couldn't have done anything different. In 2016, if I had voted for Hillary Clinton instead of voting third party, would it have made a difference? Absolutely not. Especially because, I live in a deep blue state. I live in New York, and really, like, in New York, voting for any major party is essentially throwing your vote away, because the Democrats are just going to win, and 100% of the electoral votes go to the Democrats. So in a presidential election, you should vote third party if you live in a deep blue state. Now, if you live in a red state, or you live in a swing state, that's a little different. And what I actually think people should do in that situation is arrange to vote swap. So say you are a very committed Green Party member, or a very committed libertarian, and you find yourself living in like Florida. Here's what you do. You find yourself somebody who's voting for Joe Biden, who wants to vote for Joe Biden. And you say, hey, you live in California. It doesn't matter if you vote for Joe Biden or not, but it does matter if somebody in Florida votes for Joe Biden. So I'll tell you what, you go and you vote for my party in California, where it can't hurt anything, and they still get up to towards that 6% break, where the party can become more viable in the next election. And I'll vote where it counts in this state. Now, that's a little extra work. A lot of people don't want to do that, but that's an example of how to use your vote in a smart way and to maximize the impact that you can have. But the point is that no matter what you do, it's not going to change the outcome of the election. I'm sorry, that it's just not. And as a direct result of that, you are not responsible for the good or ill that comes from the outcome of the election. The only people that are morally responsible are those whose decisions actually matter, which would be the politicians, the state, the rich, the powerful, the elite. These are the people who can be assigned moral blame or praise for the outcome of their vote. So if you vote for Joe Biden and Joe Biden goes and he bombs a Yemeni wedding, that blood is not on your hands. You could not have done, no matter what you did, that was still going to happen. Same thing if Joe Biden goes and he, for some reason, winds up passing universal health care and it saves millions of lives. You are not responsible for that. You could have done nothing within that situation. Now, it's not the same thing, however, and this is an important subtle difference, to say that voting for Joe Biden and voting for Donald Trump are exactly the same thing. Because while you can't be held morally accountable for the outcome, they are not morally equivalent symbolically. Essentially, voting for Donald Trump, and especially if you're vocal about supporting Donald Trump and putting out flags and signs, you're one of those weirdos with a pickup truck with the flags running off the back, that is actually immoral. And the reason it's immoral is that it's essentially akin to like harassing somebody or being exceptionally rude in public. Going to a party, take a dump on the floor. That's the same thing as voting for Donald Trump. It is you are not responsible for the actions of the Trump administration, but you are responsible for the effect that your signaling, the symbolism of supporting Trump has on people. And then that actually makes you somewhat complicit in, for instance, hate crimes that go on by people who feel enthusiastic and excited about Trump getting into office, and therefore then they go out and commit a hate crime. That is actually, if you voted for Donald Trump, like, you are responsible in a very small way for that. But again, it's not, your action is, you're only responsible for what you are actually able to control realistically. So these are not morally equivalent. Now, to the Democrats in the audience and to people who are rah-rah riding with Biden, stop it. Just stop it. And stop trying to use morality to shame people into voting for the candidate that you want them to. Because first off, it's a cargo cult mentality. You're screaming at a ceiling fan because you're mad about the freaking hurricane outside the door. Like, again, individuals have no impact whatsoever on the outcome of a national election. So you can't actually do that. And second of all, what you have to understand is that we are living in what is essentially a hostage situation. We did not build this system. The people that built the system, the founding fathers, they are responsible for this. The people that maintain the system and mostly benefit from the system, the rich, the powerful, the elite, they are the ones who are responsible for this. The person who is most responsible for Donald Trump right now is Hillary Clinton. I will tell you that right now. And all of the terrible things that the Donald Trump administration have done, that does not fall at the voters' foot. That does not fall at the citizens' foot. That does not even fall at the MAGA crowd's feet. That falls at Hillary's feet. And that falls at the feet of everyone that carried out those policies. Because again, and honestly, it goes all the way back to the founding fathers, the people that set up the system where people, regular people like you and me, have no actual power and have no actual say. We only more or less have the illusion of a say. So when you try to shame someone into voting for the person that you want them to vote for, I'm sorry, that is going to implode on you. Because again, you are not recognizing that this is a hostage situation. And the people that go in to vote for Biden should not be saying, yay, I'm voting for Biden, great. No, they should be responding. And this is exactly what I did when by the way, spoiler, I voted for Biden. When I voted, we're going to go back to that monologue that I had. From hell's heart, I stab at thee. For hatred's sake, I spew my last breath at thee. Captain Ahab and Khan from Wrath of Khan. The point is that the reason I voted for Biden this time, even though I'm in a deep blue state and it doesn't matter, and I would have preferred to have voted Libertarian or to have voted Green, I voted for Biden, and I did it for one very specific reason. Because I knew that no matter what happened, it would hurt Donald Trump's feelings personally. Like, even if he won, I think he's going to lose, but even if he won, I know that every vote that Joe Biden gets is going to be like a tiny little knife in his heart. And, am I that petty? Yes. Yes, I am when it comes to Donald Trump, because, he stole children, separated them from their parents, and it's disgusting. So among many other really terrible things. And also just the guy is like, I get around him as long as I can remember. I'm like basically like a cat, like, the cat's hiss at a vampire. I'm like that just with Donald Trump. But the point is that Democrats have to recognize that there are people who are interested in minimizing harm and in keeping the Republicans out of power. And there are people that are interested in breaking this, or in destroying or repairing or building anew this broken system. And you cannot use the fact that the system is broken to try to guilt someone into voting the way that you want them to vote. So that's something, Democrats, you guys got to understand and get that under your belt. Like, it does not help when you sit there and you're like, how dare you vote this way or not vote this way or not get on board with us, because of all of the horrible things that Donald Trump has done and all of the communities that he did. That's all on your head. No, it's not. Because as I explained earlier, morality and blame can only be assigned when the person actually has power and actually has control and could have done something different. Now, this is the other thing that people who think don't vote, or that by their not voting and not participating, they are giving a vote of no confidence. And, that's sort of more radical than thou. This is something you guys need to understand. And you may not know this if you've not been part of an organization that uses Robert's Rules of Order. And by the way, Robert's Rules of Order are used up at the highest levels. This is the basis of all of these kind of highly process-oriented things. And, the politicians out there, they're steeped in this stuff. An abstention, a lack of a vote, is not no vote. They don't see it that way. They don't read it that way. That's not the way it registers within Robert's Rules of Orders. There is no way to avoid voting in Robert's Rules of Orders. An abstention is a vote of, I vote for the winner. So when the Democrats and the Republicans look at the voters, and they look at how many people don't vote, they don't look at that and they say, wow, 50% of registered voters didn't vote for anyone in 2016. Well, I guess we can't elect a president because that's way more. The person who won in 2016 was, if we went by that system, no one. And I will make that point very often. I said, Donald Trump actually got third place in 2016. He got the bronze medal behind Hillary Clinton, and the overall winner of 2016, no one. Because again, more than 50%, more than 50% of the vast majority of registered voters did not vote. They chose not to vote. But that's not what people in power think. What people in power take a no vote to mean is, I trust you guys. I love what you're doing. Do whatever you want. I don't care. That's what that's what the message of not voting sends to them. So when you've got Rusty Rockets. People have said I look like him, or he looks at me. I met him once, by the way, at Occupy. It was interesting. Couldn't get him on my radio show afterwards. I'm still a little annoyed about that. But yeah, when he did that big thing where he's like, oh, I'm not voting out of apathy. I'm not voting out of a supreme level of disgust and hatred for the current system. Yeah, I get that emotionally, but keep your head in the game. Don't give in to that kind of tunnel vision, because that's not the message that it sends. Every non-voter is saying to Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Donald Trump, I love you all. I love you. Do whatever you want. It's great. This is great. I love it. I love everything about America. That's what not voting says. And I know that's not what you mean, but seriously, these process-obsessed dorks, the people that actually, the frickin' Leslie Nopes who care about government and that's what they think. And meanwhile, the more cynical ones like Donald Trump, they want people not voting. They want people disenfranchised and broken and overcome with despair. They understand that, and they want you in that so that they can continue to dominate. So in no way does refusing to vote in a national election have the effect that activists who refuse to vote think it has or want it to have. Now, so again, what we do really need to have, and somebody actually mentioned this in the chat, which is great, Moon to Skeptical, you need to vote tactically. And you also need to vote in such a way as you need to see it not as the be-all and end-all of civic engagement, which is what we were sold on, oh, this is what I do. This is a ritual we all do every 4 years. You need to see this is the least, the absolute bare minimum of engagement, and I need to do more. You need to be out in your communities. You need to be unionizing. You need to be engaging in direct action. You need to be in the street protesting. You need to be, and that really makes a big difference. You need to be signing petitions. You need to be writing and annoying your representatives. And I can tell you that actually works. And then also vote, because it does make a difference who's in power and who's not. Had a different mayor than Mayor Bloomberg been in power in New York City when he raided Zuccotti Park, that raid might not have happened. Similarly, like when we went to occupy the Republican National Convention, like back in 2012, we were treated really well. I believe was it Tampa? Jesus, it's so long ago, but like we were treated really well because the city had a Democratic mayor who was like somewhat, friendly towards Occupy. And at one point, the cops actually escorted us and like pointed us at the what was that? The Fred Phelps guy, the guy who celebrates like gay people burning in hell, whatever his church is. I can't think of the name of it right now. Yeah, like they fired us at them, and it was hilarious. And my friend actually, my friend John Murdoch, brilliant guy, worked with him at the Yippee. He got one of the people to like run away and jump inside like a trash bin. Because by yelling that he had an erection. It was really funny, like almost like Borat level stuff. So that makes a big difference when you have people that are more friendly in positions of power as opposed to people that are more aggressive in positions of power. And it will make a difference to leftist organizing. It won't be the revolution, but it's a step and it helps. And so, yeah, when I signed that thing to vote against Donald Trump for Joe Biden, was I happy about it? No, I was absolutely not happy about it. But from hell's heart, I stab at thee. For hatred's sake, I spew my last breath at thee. And it honestly made me feel really good to know that in a very tiny way that I was hurting Donald Trump. And really, everyone should do that as much as possible. Now, there was something else that I kind of wanted to bring up, like with regard to voting. So we've gone over a couple of things here. We've gone over the morality of voting and how people who vote are not responsible for the outcome of that vote if the outcome would not have been different. And in a national election, especially with the Electoral College, the outcome definitely wouldn't have been different. Then we went over, the fact that not voting is not a vote of no confidence, even if you intend it as a vote of no confidence. And we went over the need to, engage in other more important political struggles. And this was the thing that I wanted to bring up. This was what I wanted to mention. Harassing a politician actually works, guys. Like, it really does. And I'm going to give you an example of a time that it worked, specifically with Chuck Schumer. Because they do, like, oh, it's great, guys. It's absolutely wonderful. So I was, at the time, I was managing a telefundraiser for a college that I was working at. I won't say exactly which college it was, but basically I had students calling to get people to give money to their alumni like scholarship fund. And so while I got this staff of like 20, 21 students. And this was around the time that SOPA and PIPA were coming up, and they were going to, shut down Wikipedia and like all that weird stuff. So Chuck Schumer had gone through, and I was like, well, I'm a constituent of Chuck Schumer. So I went up and I tried to call Chuck Schumer and ask to meet with me if we would. And I get this like intern. And I'm like, hey, I'd really like to talk to Chuck Schumer. I'm very disturbed about this bill and stuff. And I get this smarmy little intern. Like, this kid was just such a jerk. Like, he said, he's just like, sir, do you realize that Senator Schumer is a co-sponsor of the bill? And I'm like, I mean, no, but does that make a difference here? Like, I still think it's a bad bill. He still represents me. I still want to talk to him. And he's like, well, he's not going to meet with you. And I'm like, okay, can I have a meeting with him, or can I leave a message? He's like, yeah, you can leave a message. So I go and I give them like, blah, 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 definition of fascism, all my angry stuff. And the guy, of course, is probably typing and writing it down, or maybe not, I don't know. But just being a smarmy little, oh, you can't do anything about this. So what I did was I hung up the phone and I realized something. I'm a manager and I have 21 employees with phones. So I turned to my staff and said, hey, who wants an extra 15 minutes of break? And everybody looked at me like, whoa. I was like, you need to call this number one at a time and request a meeting with Chuck Schumer about, tell him you're angry about SOPA and PIPA and request a meeting. And one after another down the line, after about 6 people, they were like, stop, Chuck Schumer will meet with these people. So yes, you can actually get politicians to like buckle, even super powerful ones like Chuck Schumer, who wouldn't spit on you if you were dying of thirst in the desert. Like seriously, and this is honestly how the NRA works. Like there's not a lot of people that support the NRA. They don't have a huge voting block behind them, but they do have the infrastructure to just harass and annoy and overwhelm the politicians with their requests and bullshit. So that is like genuinely a way that you can take part. And like even stuff like letter writing and just they really take letters seriously. Like, I don't know why. It doesn't make any logical sense, but letters, they assume that if someone like took the time to fill out a letter and mail it to them and stuff, that there's like 50 or 100 people that feel, I don't know the exact metric they say, that feel that way. So yeah, there are ways to leverage popular sentiment and your will against politicians that is more powerful than voting. The other thing, and I want to give this, and this is an anarchist saying things about good government. I will also say this very much, local government, and this is another reason why you should vote. Local government is very, very important. And this personally impacted my life because my son was born in New York City. And when he was born, we were able to use a program that allows kids to have health insurance in New York City to make it affordable, because otherwise we couldn't have afforded it since my wife did not go back to work and my job's health insurance was garbage. So what I wound up doing was signing him up for this program, and it went through like a private insurance entity. And it was really disgusting because one of the rules on this program that they don't tell you about when you're signing up for it is that all the payments must be in full and must be on time, and they make it really hard to pay. And if you miss, like if you're a day late or an hour late making this payment, you get kicked off the insurance for a month. And so, I had missed, like I'd been late on a payment because they had screwed up and sent the bill to the wrong apartment. And so like when I called in, I was like, okay, well, here's the payments. It's been like a day or so later. And they're like, no, we're not going to cover this, and I'm standing there looking at thousands of dollars in medical bills for my infant son. So I go and talk to lawyers, and lawyers are like, we can't do anything. But then they put me in touch with 2 people. There's the state attorney general and my local elected government, and said, go talk to these people. So I went to my local assemblyman, Al Taylor, and I went to his office. I didn't talk to Al, but I came in. I'm like, I'm a constituent. I live right here, and I'm having this problem. And the thing is that your local government, they are always very excited to help you. I mean, maybe not if they're Republicans, but like especially Democrats. Like if you go to them, your local assemblyman, your local state senator, give them your problem. And if it's a serious thing like this, and this was tied into the government because it was a partial government program, partial, state, they will intervene on your behalf. And suddenly this big insurance thing that I had talked to like 3 managers, and they kept telling me, no, there's nothing we can do. We are charging you with these bills. We will not cover your son's medical bills because you missed like the payment like a day late. They buckled fast, and they buckled hard as soon as they started hearing from local politicians. And I'll tell you, like, this was huge, both for me, it really helped me out, but also for them too, because as disaffected as I am with the government, like the fact that Al Taylor's people did that for me, that means a lot. That means a lot more to me than, any abstract stuff. Government actually did what it was supposed to do. It worked for the people. And so they know that, and they know that they will get someone in their corner for life if they actually do help you and solve your problems. So really, this is very key. And this is another reason why voting is so important and why you should do it. It can't, but just don't be dumb about it. Don't fall into the cargo cult mentality of, oh, if we all just vote for this particular politician, they'll make everything happen. There are limits to what the representative democratic process can do. And again, especially in the two-party system like the United States, this is a hostage situation. So what I am telling people to do is to be smart. Be smart, be ethical, and really use your votes tactically, and then continue to be involved. And Chomsky talks about this and how a lot of people in power don't want regular Americans getting involved in the system. They call that a crisis of democracy, because modern, democratic republics were set up by super rich people who feared the common man and wanted to control us and to keep us in a subservient state. And they couldn't do that via the monarchy anymore. So, they gave us a little bit. The arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And the arc of democracy is long, but it's going to bend eventually towards, in my opinion, some form of direct democracy. We have seen since the end of feudalism and the end of those empires, a gradual move towards greater individual autonomy and greater popular control over the government and the state. I don't think we can ever fully realize control over the state, which is one of the reasons I identify as an anarchist. The state, by its very nature, because it is hierarchical, will always have a couple of individuals making decisions at the top, and those individuals will always become corrupt and serve the interests of their primary constituents and their personal friends. So we need to deal with that problem, but also, we got to deal with the stuff that is right in front of us. So what I'm going to say, right before we go into the election is get out there, vote tactically, vote smart, vote to get freaking Donald Trump out of office, because he has to be held accountable for what he's done. If he is not held accountable, it's just going to make things worse. And then realize that is all that's doing is bringing us back to where we were before Donald Trump. And anybody who remembers that, we were in an awful place before Donald Trump. A lot of people of my generation, I got suckered by Obama's hope and change. I didn't vote for him due to a number of other factors. The first time around, I did vote for him. No, I didn't. I voted for Jill Stein the second time around. Good for me. But the point is that, they sold us that bill of goods, that revolution at the ballot box. It will never happen that way. They will never allow it. And these people are not your friends. Joe Biden is not your friend. Kamala Harris is not your friend. But at the same time, they are not an enemy in the way that Donald Trump is an enemy. And by taking action and dealing with that, you are not going to be, you are not going to be signing off, and you are not going to be responsible for what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris do. And they will do a lot of evil stuff when they get into office. I'm not going to say they won't, but it will be less evil than Donald Trump will do. Now, I did have a comment in there. Doubt he will actually be held accountable, even if he does get kicked out of office. I agree. But getting kicked out of office is being held accountable. That is, I'm not talking about him personally being held accountable. I'm talking about, so when it comes to rules within society and people who violate those rules and violate those norms, people like Donald Trump and the people that watch Donald Trump and want to emulate him, they see him violating the law and they see him violating norms, and they're testing, and they'll keep pushing and keep going. It's the reason why you can never appease fascists. like why fascist appeasement doesn't work, because they are constantly pushing and testing the boundaries and they will only stop when they they experience a hard pushback, either in the form of an actual physical resistance or institutional resistance. And so the people behind Donald Trump and the people that if they see him voted out of office, it's going to make them recalibrate, and realize, okay, there's the line. If they don't believe that there is a line, it'll just keep getting worse and worse and more depraved. What's very important to understand, like with elections and with the zeitgeist and everything, it's not just about the individuals involved, but like just the overall temperament of society as an organism. And that's why, the Republicans have to get voted out, even though it's not going to solve all or even most of the problems. And again, also there are people that you can work with and people that you can work under, and then there are people that are going to cause huge problems. And for those of you, there's a few people out there who make the argument, essentially the accelerationist argument. And I've always said this before: never go full accelerationist. Accelerationism is, at least as it is popularly understood by most like internet edgelords and some activists, honestly, some street activists, is the idea that you vote for the most conservative and awful politicians, they make things so bad that the revolution comes because they've just made things so bad. That's not how revolutions happen. Like historically, no revolution has ever happened because like there have been consistently such bad leadership. Bad leadership and bad policies on their own cannot cause a revolution, because revolutions traditionally happen. You look at the French Revolution, you look even at the Russian Revolution, you look at revolutions throughout history. What happens is people are kind of society's on a course and people are doing poorly or whatever. Then suddenly they start to do a bit better. And it's after doing a bit better that there is suddenly a sharp and marked downturn. That is when a revolution happens, because people still remember when things were good. If things are just bad and go from bad to worse, and you go like the whole black pill thing, and you think that eventually it will be too much and there will be a straw that breaks the camel's back and people will throw off their oppressors. No. Historically, what happens is if you go from bad to worse, people lose heart, they lose faith, they give into despair, and they just put up with it. So accelerationism cannot and never will lead to revolution, at least the acceleration that you see popularized by people who claim to be on the left, but say vote for Donald Trump because he'll bring the revolution. That's not happening. So overall, that is my analysis of this. I'm really happy about those of you in the comments. Ramiro S. Funes, great analysis, Brent. Thank you. I've been thinking about this a lot. Reminder that the Democrats made Trump one of the Pied Piper candidates from Red Dundarian. That's a great point, Red Dundarian. That was so stupid with the Pied Piper. And the thing is that was Hillary doing the Clintonite strategy from the 90s. This is, a lot of people don't understand this, but one of the reasons Hillary lost is that she was following through on a policy that used to work, which was Bill Clinton's policy of you campaign against radical right-wing Republicans while simultaneously co-opting their economic ideas, because then you get like a large section of people who would be inclined to vote Republican on your side, and you force the Democrats and the left into voting for you to avoid this radical Republican. That worked for Bill Clinton for 2 terms and drove the Republicans completely insane. And it's one of the reasons why their party tipped into where it was. It's the reason why today's Democrats, until very recently, with regard to Hillary Clinton, Hillary was essentially a 90s era Republican. Hillary economically was to the right of where she was in the 90s in 2016. Now, socially, she's to the left, but socially, that's constant movement to the left. You're never going to they're going to try to be reactionary towards culture and to put women back in the kitchen and to put these racial lines back into our society, but it's not possible. Like it's really not. And even if Trump won a second term, he still would have a huge issue with that. You can't close the bottle on social progress. But at the same time, they were fighting very hard for the economic aspect of it. And so the Republicans then just went further and further right as a result of the Democrats moving right. And then the whole country jumps to the right of, the electorate, and we're stuck, essentially. So, that tactic worked in the time when Republicans were like George H.W. Bush, who was a monster. But not a monster in the same way that Donald Trump is a monster. And Trump is, the apotheosis of that. Like, he's essentially like an outgrowth of like the Goldwater segregationist, like just the fascist element of the party, like the overt fascist element of the party. And they were kind of inevitable with that strategy because every year as a reaction to trying to campaign against radical Republicans, you just make the Republicans more and more radical. Her failure there caused a significant pushback. And now you have Joe Biden saying he's for a public option. I will believe that when I see that, Joe, because I remember when Obama said he was for a public option. And you guys are not, they will never do a public option unless we force them. That's the point. Iran closed the bottle on social progress. Actually, Gutter Grown, I don't think it did. It definitely did in certain ways, but Iran's a very specific situation because 50% of Iranians are now identifying as secular. Like Iranians, and that's in a religious dictatorship. They did close the bottle on certain things with regard to women, and that can be pushed back. But also, they were only able to do that because of the United States and because they were put into a position where the theocrats were seen to be opposing U.S. imperialism and the only choice for the people. So that's not something that's going to happen in the first world. We would need that could only happen if, for instance, there were like another more powerful entity that people chose to weaponize like radical dominionist Christianity against. And there's just nothing. Maybe if you had like another major empire with more power than the United States. But again, that's a situation that can only kind of happen in the third world or the second world or whatever Iran is these days. It's evident by Biden attacking Trump from the right that Biden's victory will serve nothing towards shifting the narrative leftward. That onus is on the left to generate mass support. Yes, thank you, SpongeBob SquarePants. That's surprisingly cogent from SpongeBob SquarePants. I love it. Yeah. So, guys, and thank you, Gutter Ground. Thank you for acknowledging my rebuttal. So I've gone for almost 45 minutes here, and I've got to get back to my wife because she's probably getting annoyed at me at this point. But that's really what I wanted to say about voting. By the way, we will be going over Chapter 6 of Homage to Catalonia tonight, me and Bobby B. So definitely check us out. Check out the Kickstarter for Snow White Zombie Apocalypse. Issue number 2 is out. If you backed it, you've got it. It will also soon be out in comic shops once Scout works out some publishing deal aspects with it. And we will be fundraising for issue number 3 very soon. I will be launching it just after the election because I don't want the election to swallow everything. Thank you guys very much. All of you who commented, your comments were absolutely great. Anarchitty, hello. Red Dundarian, hi. WizBiz, you're always wonderful to have you here. Yeah, I really appreciate everything. And I'm sorry if I was tunnel visioned. I just wanted to make sure that I got out everything that I had to say. Good evening or whatever time, y'all. Thank you, Sheldrian. And so from me, Brenton, to all of you, keep thinking, keep making the argument for a better, saner, more compassionate world. And yeah, stay safe. And for the love of God, please get Trump out of office, and just don't become a Democratic Party drone in doing it. And I don't think anyone here will, but and also finally, never let someone try to guilt you into voting the way that they want you to vote because of what is supposedly going to happen. It's not your fault, because we are in a hostage situation. So from me to all of you, I will catch you guys on the flip side. Peace and revolution.